UFC Fight Night Azerbaijan is happening this Saturday, June 21st, and I'm going to be going through the entire fight card, giving you guys my predictions and picks for each fight. Starting off with the first fight on the card, going all the way through the main event. Quickly, before I dive into the first fight of the card, I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in to Fight Feed. Make sure you subscribe if you are not subscribed so you can stay on top of all of the MMA content that I will continue to post. And also, make sure to give this video a like if you enjoy. And for all of the DGens out there, I would love to see what you guys are doing for your parlays. As a former gambler, I like to see what you guys are throwing parlays on just for fun. So something I decided to do, guys, is that instead of kind of going through the standard talking head approach that most of us MMA creators do for the fight prediction videos, what I've decided to do is break up my videos into a nice clean format. So the things that I will go through in each fight is the tail of the tape, the styles makes fights, momentum check, camp, coaching, intangibles, any X factors, and finally my pick. So for each fight on the card, there will be those 6 elements, or I guess it's 5 attributes or 5 elements, and then the 6th is the pick that I ultimately end up making. So I wanted to give you guys a heads up on that. That is what you're going to see in my prediction video here. So without further ado, let's dive into the first fight of the card, which is Mohammed Usman versus Hamdy Abdelwahab. All right, looking at the tail of the tape, we've got Mohammed Usman, who is 36 years old, and Abdelwahab is 32 years old. Both fighters are 6'2". Mohammed Usman has a reach of 79 inches, and Abdelwahab has a reach of 73 inches, giving Mohammed Usman a 6-inch reach advantage in this fight. And then looking at their weight, Mohammed Usman clocked in a little bit lower than the heavyweight limit in his last fight at 237 pounds. And Abdelwahab came in only 6 or 5 pounds under the heavyweight limit at 260. So I like to think, if we're going off of last fight, it's probably Abdelwahab's coming in there with a little bit more weight on him. And then finally, taking a look at their collective records in UFC. So we've got Mohammed Usman is 10-4 overall as a pro. Abdelwahab is 3-0-1 as a pro. So very limited experience for Abdelwahab. And then looking at their UFC specific experience, we've got Mohammed Usman at 3-2 and Abdelwahab at 1-0-1. Now taking a look at each fighter's style. We've got Mohammed Usman. He's a wrestler, grappler background, and so is Abdelwahab, however you say his name, guys. Sorry if I'm getting that wrong. So looking at their actual strengths and weaknesses, I'm going to say, so for Mohammed Usman, one strength that I put for him is genetics, because obviously the Usman family has just got some stupendous genetics, I guess. And then taking a look at some of his other things, he is a strong grappler. He's actually just physically strong in general. I don't know that he's that skilled of a grappler, but I definitely think he is strong and it helps him in some of those grappling situations. I also think that Mohammed Usman has shown to have a little bit of KO power in his career thus far. Then when we look over at Hamdy Abdelwahab's strengths, he's a very strong grappler. This guy has an Olympic background in wrestling, Greco-Roman wrestling. I believe he has a gold medal, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know for certain. But I also would call out that when I've watched Abdelwahab fight, he does have some pop in his shots. He does hurt his opponents a little bit. He gives him some sting when he's throwing the jab out there. And then when we look at their weaknesses, so Mohammed Usman's weaknesses, I say he does get gassed. And I guess it is a little bit easily, and it's not necessarily the same type of getting gassed as how we've seen Conor McGregor. I think what happens with Mohammed Usman is you'll see him be explosive for a short period of time. And when he gets gassed out, he's not like McGregor gassed out. You might actually be able to get away with being gassed and not called gassed if you're Mohammed Usman. But what ends up happening is he just has very low output, and also I would say gives up certain positions on the feet, especially like in the clinch. So that is one thing to call out there. And then I think the other thing that I would call out about Mohammed Usman is there's just so many times where it looks like he's just taking pictures out there. He gets hesitant on the feet and he's not throwing enough. And so what I would put there is that he lets his opponents get ahead, mainly just off of lack of activity is how I would put it. Now, when we look at Abdelwahab, weaknesses for him, I don't think he does very well on the back foot. I think that when people pressure him and have him on the back foot, he does not know how to handle that very well. And I also think when he is on the back foot or he gets hurt, he looks like he's lost. Like he doesn't look like comfortable out there. Whereas, some guys, they get hurt, they crack a smile, they keep it pushing. This guy, like when I've seen him have adversity in his limited experience, he looks like when he's in trouble or when he's hurt, he just looks lost out there. Now I'm going to take us through the momentum check, see where these guys are at and like what's been happening in the recent fights. So Mohammed Usman's on a 2-fight losing streak. He last fought 331 days ago. In his last 4 fights, he has a loss to Thomas Peterson, a loss to Mick Parkin, and then a win over Jake Collier and a win over Junior Tafa. Now when we look at Hamdy Abdelwahab, he has a 1-fight win streak. Technically, if you look up online, it says more, but he actually had a no contest in between. So what I'm going to call out here is that he has a 1-fight win streak. He last fought 135 days ago, so he's actually pretty active here. He last fought in February this year. And his last 4 fights, he has a win over Jamahal Pogues. In my opinion, guys, his last win should not have been a win. I feel he lost that fight, and I feel Jamahal Pogues got robbed. Then we have a no contest with Dontel Mays, and then a win over Matthew Strickland and a win over Tyler Lee. One call out, though, is the Matthew Strickland and Tyler Lee wins were not in the UFC, of course. Jumping into, finally, their camp and coaching, just taking a look at their camps or their coaches. So Mohammed Usman is training at Killcliff FC for this fight camp. He is mainly using Henry Hu from what I've seen on social media. For training partners, I just put Kamaru Usman because I know that they train together. I don't know who else Mohammed is training with, and honestly, guys, I don't have the time to go and fucking look it all up. I looked on Instagram, he didn't have anything. So Hamdy, on the other hand, trains at Killer Bee Combat, which is not one that is very well known to fans like myself, but his key coach is Brian Wright, and I did not have any information regarding his key training partners. Jumping into the intangibles and X factors of this fight. Mohammed Usman is not the home fighter here. I do think that he is in a pressure-filled situation in that he is on a losing streak loss-wise and needs to – that makes no fucking sense. He is on a losing streak, and he needs to get a W here so he can get back in that win column. The red flags, I would say, for Mohammed Usman, he's just inconsistent, and I feel like he doesn't push for a finish in his fights. He doesn't push that pace or like try to end the fight. I feel like there's a lot of times I'm watching him, and I'm just like, fucking do something. And then finally, other variables. I just put a note in this column for him that Kamaru just won, and that could give him some steam to maybe get a W here. Now, looking at Hamdy, we've got I said that he's somewhat of a home fighter because this is like, I don't know, I feel like Azerbaijan has like a lot of Russian ties, if I'm not mistaken. Not even Russian ties, but I don't even know where I'm getting this from. I just feel like when they've gone to like Muslim populated countries that Hamdy gets the nod. And that's why I feel like he actually got the nod in his last fight. Like not even trying to bullshit. I feel like it was such a blatant, like he did not win his last fight in my opinion. Anyway, pressure for Hamdy is that he is undefeated. And yeah, the other notes I've already kind of said, I feel like he lost his last fight. So jumping into my pick for this fight, I am choosing Hamdy to win this fight. I do think that he will pose enough problems and have a strong enough pace to have Mohammed Usman kind of be in that standard realm that he's in where he's hesitant, doesn't know what to do. I think Hamdy's going to be able to grind out a decision in that regard, and I feel he'll get the win. Next fight on the card, we've got Tagir Ulanbekov versus Azat Maksum. In this tail of the tape, we've got Tagir, who's 33 years old, 5'7", 70-inch reach, 16-2 record professionally with a 5-1 record in the UFC. And Azat Maksum, age 30, 5'7" with a 70-inch reach, 17-1 record with a 1-1 record in the UFC. Taking a look at their styles, both these guys have a little bit of grappling, but Ulanbekov is a wrestler through and through. His strengths are going to be rangy in terms of his striking ability on the feet. He's going to stay rangy and try to land some shots at range. But then also his other very, very good strength is getting his opponents to the ground, throwing up that submission threat, or even landing with solid ground and pound. A very good ground and pound from Ulanbekov. We saw that in his last fight against Clayton Carpenter. Some weaknesses for him is that he can be open on the feet to be caught by shots. He did get caught a couple times in his last fight. But then taking a look at Azat, he has obviously a very well-rounded striking game, dynamic striking, looks to either try to get a submission or a knockout. So he is a bit of a finisher and has some pop in his shots. He can be outdogged, though, and that is something that the energy Charles Johnson showed us when he fought Azat Maksum, when he was able to get a win over him. Just outdogged him, just had more grind, and just fucking took him to the fucking ringer and made him feel it, and ultimately got that win. Momentum check for these guys. Ulanbekov is a 3-fight win streak. He last fought 149 days ago, back in January, I believe it was. His last 4 fights are Clayton Carpenter, win over Cody Durden, a win over Nate Maness, and a loss to Tim Elliott. And then taking a look at Maksum, his streak is 1 loss. He last fought 498 days ago. So his last fight was against Charles Johnson, where he lost. So right there, that could tell us a story. Is this guy been in the fucking lab cooking for a long time and getting ready to come back out and show us something? His last, as I mentioned, his loss to Charles Johnson, and then he has 3 wins. He has a win over Tyson Nam, a win over Fabricio Nunez, and a win over Alan Gabriel. Taking a look at camp and coaching, nothing really to write home about here. Ulanbekov, I believe, has a key coach in Khabib Nurmagomedov, but outside of that, not much to really say about Azat because I couldn't find any details on that, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the coaching stuff, guys. I'm sorry, but I'm just not. Intangibles and X factors. Tagir Ulanbekov, I would say it's kind of like a somewhat of a home fight for both these guys. His last win, though, I feel like it was a lackluster win over Clayton Carpenter. He did show some dominance, but he also showed some weaknesses, and I think that in order to get that out of people's brains, he's got to go out there and put on a marquee performance against Azat. And then some red flags. Like I said, he just sometimes relies a little bit heavy on his lay and pray. He can sometimes get control of an opponent, take him to the ground, and not really do much on the ground. And so I think that is something just to be worried about in regards to his game. Now, Azat, I think the biggest thing for him is just this layoff, 500-day layoff of no fights. And I also didn't like to see that Charles Johnson basically just outdogged him to get a win. My final pick is going to be Tagir Ulanbekov. I believe that he has not only the activity behind him, but he also will probably be able to overpower Azat in some of these grappling exchanges, ultimately probably pulling off a decision in his favor. I would say I'm a 4 out of 5 on this one. I do think that Azat's a great fighter. He can definitely find a way to get a win, but I'm pretty heavily leaning towards Ulanbekov. All right, the next fight on the card, we've got Irina Alekseeva versus Klaudia Syguła. So, tail of the tape for this one, we've got 34 years old for Irina Alekseeva, 5'8", 66-inch reach, 5-2 professional record with a 1-1 record in the UFC. And then Klaudia Syguła, 26 years old, so a little bit younger than Alekseeva. She's 5'8" with a 69-inch reach and 6-2 professional record with an 0-1 UFC experience. Jumping down to the styles for this fight. So Irina Alekseeva, she's got a Sambo style. She's from Russia. She literally looks like a character out of fucking Oblivion in this photo anyways. Her strength, she's a very strong grappler. I have a note here that she has 40% of her wins by submission, so she's definitely going to be looking to get this fight to the ground. Weaknesses for her, she lacks professional experience, but so I think both of these girls do. And she also just previously lost to number 15 in the bantamweight division for women. So, I mean, not the worst sign in the world, because I think when you think about the top 15, that is, the top 15 in the world when you're looking at the UFC. But I think losing to number 15 in a convincing manner doesn't necessarily set you highly for future expectations, if you will. Anyways, Klaudia Syguła, she is a striker. Her strengths are going to be, wanting to keep this on the feet. She has very fast striking from what I've seen in her previous fights. She's also able to mix up her attacks quite a bit between the head, body, and legs. So that's nice to see from a striker. And then also just looking at her weaknesses, she can definitely get overpowered in grappling exchanges, and I can see, especially in this matchup, where if she is taken down, this is not going to be a good sign for her in this matchup, and so that's something that's leaning into my pick. But jumping down to the momentum check, Irina Alekseeva's coming off of a loss. She last fought 611 days ago, so quite some time for her since she's been in the octagon. Last 4 fights, she's also lost to Melissa Mullins. You're also going to see that Klaudia has as well. And then she also lost to she got a win over Stephanie Egger, a win over Stephanie Page, and then a loss to Lilia Kazak. Don't know who that is. Klaudia, on the other hand, she's got a one. They're both coming off of a loss here. She, being Klaudia, fought 219 days ago. She last fought Melissa Mullins and lost, and then she had 3 wins previous to that. Iwa P. I couldn't. That woman's last name was too long for me to put in here, guys. And then you see the rest of them there. Camps and coaching, nothing really to write home about here, guys. I wish I had more information in terms of, who they're training with. But it looks like Irina trains at a place called Ratiborets. I think that's Russian, so probably butchering the fuck out of that. Klaudia, on the other hand, trains at Ankos MMA Poisan. And then looking at the intangibles and X factors for this fight, Irina Alekseeva, I guess it's somewhat of a home fight. It's not necessarily home field advantage for either woman. Pressure for her being Irina. She needs to win. She's got to get a W in the UFC here and maybe get something dominant. I don't know that there's a ton of talent in this division, so it's not necessarily that she's going to get cut per se, but I just think that she's pretty inconsistent in my red flags is what I called out, is just inconsistency and doesn't necessarily push to finish fights. She also hasn't fought in 2 years, guys, 611 days since she's been in the octagon. Klaudia, on the other hand, she has some pressure. She's coming off of a loss in the UFC. She has to get a W in the UFC so she could stay and maybe get some momentum there. My final decision in this pick, I would say, is heavily driven by not only the fact that Klaudia has the age advantage here, she's also been more active than Irina, and so I think that that's all going to play in her favor. I see her getting a decision win in this fight, potentially a KO, but I'm definitely leaning heavy on the decision, and I'd say my confidence here is a 3 out of 5, mainly because Alekseeva still has that grappling threat that I don't know Klaudia will be able to deal with very well. So we'll have to see, how that all shakes out on the night of. Next fight on the card, we've got Darya Zhelezniakova versus Melissa Mullins. Tail of tape for this one. Darya is age 29. Melissa's 33. Darya is 5'9" with a 68-inch reach. And Melissa Mullins is 5'7" with a 68-inch reach. And then looking at the records for each of these women, we've got Darya at 9-2 in her professional career, 1-1 in UFC. And then we have Melissa Mullins, who is 7-1 in her professional career, with a 2-1 record in UFC. Sorry, my dogs are fucking... Hey! Now taking a look at their styles. So Darya is primarily a striker. Her strengths, obviously, she's a very adept striker. She has 56% of her wins by KO. Her weaknesses is that she seems to have some weaknesses in the grappling realm and also just seems to get out-muscled when it comes to grappling exchanges, getting submitted, things of that nature. But then Melissa Mullins, I put that she's a bit of a jack of all trades. She kind of does everything in MMA, and I think if you look up her style, she actually even says her style is just MMA. Like, she just goes for everything. And so with that, I would say her strengths, though, are mainly tied to her grappling. I believe if she's able to get Darya down to the ground, she's going to have more pressure and then power in her hands, especially when it comes to ground and pound. She's had a couple finishes by ground and pound. So I would say that really more so edging on the grappling side. Weaknesses for her, she's not the most technical striker on the feet, but obviously she makes do with that. But then I think also looking at her past, she has missed weight a couple times. So just calling that out as well. Momentum check. So Darya is coming off of one loss in the UFC. She last fought 261 days ago. In her last 4 fights, she lost to Aylin Perez, and then a win over Montserrat Rendon, a win over Marie I don't know how you say her last name, and then a loss to Melissa Mullins, the same Melissa Mullins we're talking about here. Now when we look at Melissa Mullins, she's on a 1-fight win streak. She last fought 219 days ago. In her last 4 fights, she fought Klaudia Syguła. She won by KO. I think Klaudia is actually fighting on this card as well. She also then lost to Nora Cornol, and then she won over Irina Alekseeva and Darya Z, which is Darya right here. Camp and coaching. So Darya trains at MMA Factory in France. So her key coach is Fernand Lopez. And, I don't even know if she trains with Cyril Gane, but he's one of the guys that fights out of that gym. And then you have Melissa Mullins. She doesn't have an affiliation with a certain team. So I don't have any details there in terms of her coaches and training partners. Taking a look at intangibles and X factors. We've got Darya, who is not the home fighter. Neither of these women are actually. The pressure for Darya is that she needs to get a win, and this is a rematch. So it's not only just getting a win to get back in the win column, but it's also trying to mark this correct because she previously lost to Mullins in a different promotion. Some other variables, I just put a note here that I don't think her ground game is going to be very highly skilled, just given that Fernand Lopez and some of the guys that come out of that gym like Cyril Gane, they just don't have the greatest ground game. Not to say I'm shitting on Fernand Lopez. I added that as a note because I don't think she's going to have a ground game that is up to par. Now, Melissa Mullins, on the other hand, I don't really have much for her. Not a lot of pressure in this fight. She's coming off of a win, and she's already beat Darya. I think that the deck might actually be stacked in her favor if you think about it. But Darya definitely has a chance to catch her on the feet. So when we go to the pick, ultimately I have chosen Melissa Mullins to get the win here, guys. I think that she will be able to push the pace and control the fight from start to finish, likely bringing it to a decision. And I have a confidence level of 4 out of 5 in picking Melissa Mullins by decision in this fight. The next fight on the card, we've got Ismail Naurdiev versus Jong Park. Tail of the tape for these boys. We got age 28 for Naurdiev. He's 6 feet tall. He is 74-inch reach and a 24-7 professional record with a 3-2 UFC record. Jong Park, the Turtle, 34 years old, 5'10", with a 73-inch reach, an 18-6 record with an 8-3 record in the UFC. Taking a look at these guys' styles, I think Naurdiev is a bit of a striker. 50% of his wins by KO, which is a good strength. Some weaknesses, I think that he can be out-muscled and out-grappled on the ground. Now, looking at Jong Park, this guy's a jack of all trades. This dude can do it all. He is very strong at grappling. He looks to get that control and pressure, but then he also is a bit of a scrappy striker. Like, he'll get caught on the feet, and then he'll randomly throw some shit back, catch his opponents, hurt them on the feet at times. But he has a lot of weaknesses in the sense that I've seen him get hurt quite a bit in fights, but he just finds a way to stay in there and still be dangerous with whomever is hurting him within these fights. I would say one other thing just to call out is that he has a 6-year age disadvantage in this matchup, so that's definitely something to call out there as well. So momentum check for these guys. Ismail, 2-fight win streak for him. He last fought 233 days ago. His last 4 fights, he has a win over Bruno Silva, a win over Tagir Hadbi, however you say his name, and then 2 losses prior, which were outside of the UFC. And this is his second stint in the UFC, guys. Now, Jong Park, streak of 1, and that's just because he had a loss to Andre Muniz that was a bit contested. People thought that it could go the other way. But if you look at all of the fights before that, he is a a win to Brad Tavares, which is a great win, a win over Albert Duraev, and then a win over Dennis Talulin. Camp and coaching, so just looking at these guys, I don't know anything about this stuff. Naurdiev trains at top team Salzburg, and then Janyang Park trains at Korean top team. So they're both top team guys. The intangibles and X factors, Naurdiev, somewhat of a home fight for him. Not a lot of pressure going into this one, though. I wouldn't say he's on a bit of a win streak. He's lost to good grapplers in the past, so I think that is a big red flag when you're going up against the Iron Turtle. On the other hand, just taking a look at his stuff, nothing really of note to even call out here. I think the only red flag is he can be caught on the feet at times. But when I look at this fight, guys, I see the Iron Turtle just doing what the Iron Turtle does. Deploying that game plan, getting him wrestling his ass up against the cage, bringing him down, maybe going for a rear naked choke. This guy is a very, very scrappy, not only just striker, but scrappy on the grappling as well. He's able to shrimp his way out of certain situations. And actually, sometimes he's been in trouble from a grappling perspective. He rolls out and finds his own submission at times. So this guy, I think, could potentially get a submission or a decision. And my confidence level is a 3 out of 5 on that. The next fight on the card, we have Syguła Koi versus Oban Elliott. Tail of the tape. We've got Koi. I'm going to call him Ko. It's not Koi. It's Ko. Ko, 31 years old. Elliott, 27 years old. Ko is 5'10". Elliott is 6 foot tall. Ko has a 71-inch reach. Elliott has a 72-inch reach. Both 170 pounds. And then the record. So Ko is 11-2 in his professional career. And Oban is 12-2. So just a little bit better there. And then Ko has a 0-0 experience because I do not count Contender Series. That is a separate thing. So he's debuting this Saturday. And then we have Oban Elliott, who is 3-0 in the UFC. The styles. So taking a look at their styles, Ko is primarily a striker, obviously. Great. What I put in terms of his... Ko is a striker, and I put that he's a great striker because he has 55% of his wins by KO. Some weaknesses that I've called out on his game is he's just been KO'd in the past, and he just doesn't really pose much of a ground threat. Has 0 submissions on his record from what I saw. Now, Oban, on the other hand, is a jack of all. I feel like he has a very mixed bag with his game. He can do takedowns. He can submit you on the ground. He could knock you out on the feet. He is definitely a jack of all trades when it comes to the MMA game. I think that his strengths tie right into what I just said. Very great all-around game. He has strong striking, and I also feel like we've seen him in adversity in some of his fights, but he finds a way to get the win. And then looking at his weaknesses, he can be hurt on the feet. I think I've seen him get dropped a couple times in the UFC. But like I said, he does fight and find his way back to get that W. Now, taking a look at their momentum, Ko is on a 4-fight win streak, whereas Oban Elliott's an 8-fight win streak. Ko last fought 286 days ago, and Oban Elliott fought 212 days ago. So they're relatively within that same time frame. Obviously, Oban fought a little bit more previous by about 60 days or so. But then last 4 fights, Ko has a win over Igor Cavalcante, win over Alwin Kincaid. These guys are all guys that are not in the UFC. I don't really know where they stack up. But then when we look at Oban Elliott's last 4 fights, he's got a win over Basel Hafez, which was a great knockout back in November, a win over Preston Parsons, and then a win over Val Woodburn, and a win over Kaique Brito. So both guys pretty much streaking, but Ko just has not had a chance to do that in the UFC just yet. So looking at their camps and coaching, not much to go over here, guys. I just saw that Ko trains at Havas Seoul, and then you have Oban Elliott who trains at Shore MMA. Taking a look at the intangibles and X factors, Ko, by putting neither one of these guys are the home fighter, it is a pressure on Ko to get a W in his UFC debut. So this is his first time under the big lights, and it's in a packed arena, whereas Oban Elliott's kind of done that dance previously. So that is one thing to call out there. And then looking at some red flags, obviously Ko has been caught in the past and KO'd. But then also I would even say the same for Oban Elliott. He has been open on the feet at times and countered. So just keeping that of note. Then other variables, I did just add one final note here, just that UFC debut could either play into favor or against Ko. Like, he could use this as inspiration, or it could be a, the lights are too bright for him type of thing. Ultimately, jumping into my pick, I have chosen Oban Elliott to get the W here, guys. I feel he has the experience edge, and also he's taken on just better and higher level opposition, in my opinion. I do think that Oban Elliott's likely to get a decision versus getting, a finish, but I could be wrong there. My confidence level in him winning is a 4, I would say. Now, I'm not necessarily sure I'm a 4 on the decision method, but I feel a 4 out of 5 in terms of him getting the W. The next fight on the card, we've got Mohammed Naimov versus Bogdan Grad. Tail of the tape. Naimov is 30, 5'9", with a 70-inch reach and 12-3 record overall, with a 4-1 record in the UFC. Bogdan Grad on the other side, 29 years old, 5'8", 70-inch reach, 15-2 professional record with a 1-0 UFC experience. Styles. So Mohammed Naimov is just an MMA style overall. He's got the striking, he's got the grappling. He's kind of very well-rounded and shown good rapport in both the striking and grappling. I put a note here that he is a great striker with 42% of his wins by KO. He has solid submission game too, so he has 25% of his wins are by submission. So he's kind of able to mix it up and get that finish in multiple realms. And some weaknesses that I've noticed from him is he can be out-grappled, as he was submitted in 2024. And then Bogdan Grad on the other side, I have him as a jack of all. He's got a well-rounded game, very dangerous on the feet. I put a note that he has a 60% win. Bogdan has dangerous striking. 60% of his wins come by way of knockout. And then some weaknesses on his side is just he's been caught and KO'd on the feet before. He actually lost his first Contender Series fight that he had. He got knocked out by Tom Nolan. So he definitely has openings on the feet where he can get hurt. Taking a look at their momentum. So the momentum check on this one, we've got Mohammed Naimov is on a 2-fight win streak. He last fought 135 days ago. Looking at his last 4 fights, he had a win over Khan Offley, which was 135 days ago. A loss to Felipe Lima, a win over Eric Silva, and a win over Nathaniel Wood. Bogdan Grad on the other side, 4-fight win streak. He last fought 135 days ago. A win over Lucas Alexander, a win over Michael Aswell. Don't know who these guys are. I'm not going to read all of their names. Next, we've got their camps and coaching. I'm not even going to go into it, guys, because I only had the Etel Bros MMA for Bogdan Grad. Naimov does not have an affiliation to a team online. Taking a look at their intangibles and X factors, I would say it's somewhat of a Mohammed Naimov home location, if you will. Not a lot of pressure for him in this fight necessarily. He has lost to good grapplers in the past, so that is one red flag I'd call out. And then looking at Bogdan Grad, I would say just a red flag for him is that he can be open on the feet at times. Ultimately, my pick for this fight is Mohammed Naimov. I think that his experience is going to edge out this win. He'll be able to mix in the grappling and still have good striking on the feet. He does need to stay away from Bogdan Grad's very, very heavy power. But if he can stay away from that, mix in his grappling, mix in his striking. I mean, Naimov was throwing spinning back kicks in his last fight. Like, this guy has some good striking that he can utilize. I do have a pretty high confidence level, 3 out of 5. I think he'll be able to get the win by decision. The next fight on the card, we've got Nazim Sadykhov versus Nikolas Motta. Tail of the tape. Sadykhov's 31 years old, 5'10" with a 69-inch reach, 10-1-1 record, and 3-0-1 in the UFC. Motta, on the other hand, is 32 years. Okay, we got 32 years old, 5'9". Motta, on the other hand, is 32 years old, 5'9", with a 70.5 inch reach, with a 15-5 professional record, and a 3-2-1 record in the UFC. Taking a look at the styles for this fight, Sadykhov is a striker, I think generally a kickboxer. He has a lot of tools on the feet. I did put down a note here that he is a fantastic striker with 70% of his wins by KO. And then some weaknesses for him is he can be open on the feet to get caught. But I think ultimately I don't have a lot of red flags or weaknesses for Sadykhov. Sadykhov's looked very, very good since he's joined the UFC. And I think that he'll continue to rise. But looking at Motta, on the other hand, he is a kickboxer, and he also has KO power in his hands. People forget that Motta can knock motherfuckers out. He's got 67% of his wins by KO, but when we look at his weaknesses, he has a tendency of getting caught, and all of his losses as a professional are by KO. Or, I'm sorry, not all of his losses, 80% of them, which is damn near all of them. Momentum check. Sadykhov is coming off of a one-fight win streak. Technically speaking, you could argue, it's more than that, but he did have a draw, so I have to say one-fight win streak. Looking at his last fight, he last fought 121 days ago, so he is very active. Last 4 fights, he won against Ismail Bonfim, which is a very good win. He had a draw against Vlishavtaj Borshev, which Slava Claus, that was a tough fight when you actually break it down, because I think Borshev has been taken out and dispatched of by other fighters. And so, if you're playing MMA math, that might make you change your opinion or your thoughts. But taking a look at his other previous wins, he has a win over Terrence McKinney, which is a great win. Terrence McKinney is one of those types of guys at lightweight who has a lot of talent and is a skilled fighter. And then Evan Elder, that's another solid win for Sadykhov. Now looking at Motta, we've got a 2-fight win streak for Motta. He last fought 205 days ago. Last 4 fights for him, we got Mahashate High with a win, and then Tom Nolan, a win over him, a no contest with Trey Ogden, and a loss to Manuel Torres. Their camp and coaching, so Sadykhov, I know, trains at Syndicate MMA with John Wood, and then he also has Ray Longo, because he actually originally came up with the Sarah Longo tribe over in I think it's in Long Island, if I'm not mistaken. But taking a look at some of his main key training partners, we've got Aljamain Sterling and Merab, which what else do you need in that regard? Now, Nikolas Motta, on the other hand, I said he trains at Extreme Couture, and he has Eric Nixick as a head coach. I just said key training partners, all of them, because there's literally like 1,000 fucking great, amazing fighters that go and fight at Couture. The next, looking at their intangibles and X factors here. So we have Sadykhov is the home fighter in this fight, guys. He is from Azerbaijan. I believe he's either from there or he grew up there. I know that he is a hometown fighter. If you look on the UFC site, he has their flag behind him. And then also taking a look at just some of the things that he has pressure on him. He has a pressure to continue growing with his ranking in lightweight. He's not yet ranked, but I think he's a win over Nikolas Motta puts him right there to get a potential ranking. And then also that pressure to win in his hometown. That's a pressure that could sometimes, it could sometimes be an inspiration and get these guys to really go out there and try to get the win, but it also can make them, see the big scary lights and be a deer in headlights. Nikolas Motta, on the other hand, I really don't think he has much pressure at all in this fight. I do think that if I'm going to call out red flags for Nikolas Motta, it is mainly just that he can be caught on the feet and his chin is a bit testy at times, and obviously we've seen him get KO'd. So I don't know how well he'll be able to put up with the damage that Sadykhov is bringing towards him. And that ultimately leads me to my pick, guys. I'm picking Sadykhov for this win because I feel he is going to bring a certain amount of damage that I don't know Nikolas Motta will be able to withstand within a 15-minute contest. My confidence level on this one is a 5 out of 5. I could be dead fucking wrong, though. The next fight on the card, we've got Mincy Betts Orobai versus Tofik Musayev. The tail of the tape for this one, we got Mincy Betts is a 27 years old, 5'10", 74-inch reach, a 13-2-1 record with 2-1 in the UFC. Now Musayev on the other side, age 35, 5'10", a 72-inch reach, 22-5, but a 0-0 record in the UFC. So Musayev is got a wealth of experience, but none in the UFC. He's also 35 at lightweight. Next fight, taking a look at their styles, I've got Orobai as he's basically like a striker, grappler, mix combo, kind of like an all-around. And then Musayev's a striker through and through. Looking at Orobai's strengths, I put that he's a great striker. He's got 46% of his wins by KO. And then he also has a great submission game where he's actually been able to get 38% of his wins by submission. Some weaknesses for Orobai, though, is that he can be dropped on the feet. In his last fight, he was dropped by a Rebecki. So I think that he's not just this invincible striker. I think that he definitely has chances where he can get caught and hurt. Whereas on the other hand, looking at Musayev, he has extreme danger on the feet. 82% of his wins are by KO. And I also, when I look at his weaknesses, though, I feel like he just hasn't bought. I feel as though Musayev has not fought the best opposition compared to that of Orobai or even just other UFC fighters, given that most of them are outside of the UFC and in other promotions. Jumping into the momentum check, Orobai just lost his last fight in October. He last fought 233 days ago. And as you can see here, his last 4 fights, he's got a loss to Rebecki, and then he has a win over Elvis Brenner, a win over Eros Medic, and then a win over Hayward Charles. Whereas Tofik Musayev, he's on a 2-fight win streak, but he hasn't fought since 590 days ago, which was back in 2023. So looking at that, you have to start to question some things given that he hasn't fought in such a long time. But then looking at his last 4 fights, I'm not even going to read these guys' names because I don't know who they are. But he has a win-win, lost-win. And most notably, when he did lose, he actually got KO'd. He got hit with a body kick. So he is also, catchable on the feet, if you will. Taking a look at their camps and coaching, similar to other ones, I don't have too much details on these guys. We've got Mincy Betts, trains at Ulu Krieg's team, and then Tofik Musayev trains out of Orion Fight Club. And then looking at the intangibles and X factors. So I would say Orobai is like somewhat of a home fighter, not really, but I would say the pressure for him is that he's coming off of an L and he's going to want to get back in that win column. Some red flags is just he's just been very catchable by counters with his opponents. But other variables, nothing really to note. Now, one thing I'm going to call out here for Tofik Musayev is that he is the home fighter. He's from Azerbaijan. So the pressure's on him, not only as the home fighter, but also as a debuting UFC fighter at 35 years old in the lightweight division. And then red flags, I just think that he can be open on the feet, and he's also been hurt and knocked out by lesser opponents. So I think that that's something to be worried about in this fight. And that ultimately leads me to my pick. Guys, I'm going with the tried and true UFC-tested Mincy Betts Orobai. I think that he's going to get the win. I do think that this is probably going to be a scrap back and forth, but Orobai will probably just use that experience edge that he has to take this guy into a bit of a deep water, 15-minute type fight and get the decision at the end of the day. I have a 3 out of 5 confidence level on that one because, what's his name? Musayev's still got some stone hands, so he might be able to catch Orobai and put him out. But I'm thinking that it's going towards Orobai getting a decision win. The next fight on the card, we have Rizvan Kuniev versus Curtis Razor Blades. So looking at the tail of the tape, Kuniev, 32 years old, 6'4" height with a 76-inch reach and a 13-2-1 professional record. 0 fights in the UFC. He has 1 fight where he won on the Contender Series, and now he is coming to the big show. Curtis Razor Blades, on the other hand, 34 years old, 6'4" height with an 80-inch reach. Guys, believe it or not, I have the same exact height and reach as Curtis Blades, but I'm not. I'd get my ass beat by Curtis Blades. Taking a look at his record, he's 18-5-1, 13-5 in the UFC. So a wealth of experience in the UFC for Curtis Razor Blades. Styles, I think Rizvan Kuniev, I think that on paper he's probably a striker. 50% of his wins are by KO. It's crazy how many guys have 50% of their wins by knockout. My weaknesses for Kuniev, he's not a very fast striker, not a very well-built striker. He's just a big boy. Now, Curtis Blades, I would say he's a bit of a jack of all at this point. He's got the wrestling and the grappling down, but his striking has looked massively improved. He's hurt guys on the feet, got KOs, very strong grappler, but he has that striking where he can also find a KO. Some weaknesses for him. I think the weaknesses for Curtis Blades is just he can get caught at times. His chin's there to be tagged sometimes by his opponents. I think he has to find a way to keep his chin tucked. Looking at their momentum check. So Kuniev's coming off of a 1-fight win streak. He last fought 300 days ago. His last fight was against Hugo Kuna. And by the way, Kuniev has a no contest against Renan Ferreira, who is the guy from PFL. He's no contest because he popped for steroids. And it wasn't like some bullshit steroids. He popped for like a bunch of shit. And then looking at Curtis Blades, I'm going to just call out some of his stuff. He last fought 324 days ago, which is actually crazy to think about. He's on a 1-fight losing streak. He lost to Tom Aspinall, but he beat J. Elton Almeida before that. And then we saw, he lost to Sergey, and then he got the win over Tom due to injury. Camps and coaching. So taking a look at their camps, I don't really know who Curtis is training with at this current moment. I do see that Rizvan is with Goritz FT, which I don't even know who the fuck that is. Intangibles and X factors. So Kuniev, this is his debut. I would say this is somewhat of a home advantage for him, but he has a debut in the UFC, so he's going to have the big lights on him. Can this guy come to the big show and handle the big lights? We'll see what happens. Red flags. Looks like he is probably going to gas out quickly, in my opinion. And when we look at Curtis Blades, not the home fighter. The pressure for him is just needs to get a win, get back in the win column. Not a huge pressure, though. I think that Curtis, I obviously think everybody wants to win, but I don't think that is going to be weighing super heavy. Like, I don't think he's on the chopping block, guys. Red flags is that he can be open down the feet at times and potentially caught by some big shots. Ultimately, my pick is going with the hometown hero, Aurora, Illinois, stand up, Curtis Blades. And the reason why, the guy has all the experience, he has all the skill. I just don't see Kuniev being able to outdo or outwork Curtis Blades, given all of his previous work that he's done and just all the skills he has. He's a fantastic grappler. He can also land some KO power shots. I think Curtis Blades gets this one done, guys. And I have a confidence level of a 4 out of 5. I do think that Curtis is likely to get a decision, but he, like I said, he could always find a KO or submission as well. All right, the next fight on the card, we've got our co-main event, Rafael Fiziev versus Ignacio Bahamondes. So looking at this fight in the tail of the tape, we've got it. Rafael is 32, 5'8", 71.5-inch reach, 12-4 professionally, 6-4 in the UFC. Taking a look at Ignacio Bahamondes on the other side, age 27, 6'3", so he's a bit of a skyscraper for this weight class, 73-inch reach, 17-5 record overall, and a 6-2 record in the UFC. Looking at their styles, Rafael Fiziev comes in with that Muay Thai, Tiger Muay Thai fighting style. Very, very good striker. 67% of his wins by knockout. Some weaknesses for him is that he can be taken down, and he's also been shown to be caught on the feet a few times. Looking at his last fight, Gaethje caught him with that. I think it was like an uppercut, knocked him down. Ignacio Bahamondes on the other hand, is a freestyle fighter. So he's kind of a mixed bag in terms of what he brings to the game. Strengths, very versatile striker, very creative striker as well. Has a lot of spinning kick attacks that kind of come out of nowhere. Very good hands, too. Was able to knock out Manuel Torres. 65% of his wins by KO. Some weaknesses for him is just that he has been out-grappled in the past, taken down and just basically overpowered by his some previous opponents. So just things to call out there. He's also been submitted as well. Now, looking at momentum, I think Rafael Fiziev is coming off of 3 losses here. So he also last fought 100 days ago. So he has not been out for very long here, but neither is Bahamondes on the other side. Looking at their last 4 fights, we got Rafael Fiziev, Justin Gaethje loss that we all know about. Mateusz Gamrot right before that. It is a loss on the record, but I don't necessarily count it or rate it highly because it was just an injury loss. And then you had his previous loss to Justin Gaethje, which happened right before that. And then a win over Rafael dos Anjos. So, yeah, last 3 fights. But the good thing, I guess, for Rafael Fiziev is he's only lost to Gaethje in the UFC. And then looking at Ignacio Bahamondes, he has a 3-fight win streak. Last fought 100 days ago. Last 4 fights, win over Jalen Turner, huge win for him. Win over Manuel Torres, a win over Christos Giagos, and then a loss to Ludovic Klein. Looking at their camps and coaching, so I know Rafael trains at Tiger Muay Thai. That's all I know for him. Now, Ignacio Bahamondes, I know he trains at Valet Flow Striking Academy in Bensonville, I think it is, Illinois. And he actually has some key training partners like Yair Rodriguez and Bilal Muhammad. So that's a really good camp. And then taking a look at intangibles and X factors. Rafael is the home fighter. He's from Baku, Azerbaijan. I don't know if he's from Baku, but he's from Azerbaijan. And then we got pressure. He's got 3 losses in a row, so he needs to get a win here. Some red flags for him is he's just lost to good grapplers in the past is what I called out for him. Some other variables is that he's really only lost to Gaethje in his career in the UFC, at least, like in terms of like a real loss, not an injury loss. Now, Bahamondes does not have as much pressure. I do think that some red flags is he can be open on the feet at times, so he's got to watch out for Rafael, who does pose a bit of a threat on the feet. But ultimately, I ended up choosing Ignacio Bahamondes, guys. I think that he is going to ride the momentum that he's got on this current streak that he's on. I think that he's going to be able to catch Rafael, and I also just think his size is going to be dramatic to that of Rafael. Rafael has been talking about moving down to featherweight, so that tells me he does not feel as confident in that lightweight weight class, whereas Ignacio Bahamondes could probably be a welterweight given that he's 6'3". So I am going with him in this fight to get the job done, likely by KO or perhaps decision. The main event, guys. We've got Jamahal Hill versus Khalil Rountree Jr. So, taking a look at the tail of the tape, we got Jamahal Hill. He's 34 years old, 6'4" tall with a 79-inch reach, 12-3 in his professional career with a 6-3 UFC record. Now, jumping over to Khalil Rountree Jr., we've got at age 35, 6'1" with a 76.5-inch reach, a 13-6 professional record with a 9-6 UFC record. Taking a look at these guys' styles, obviously both these guys are heavily weighted on the striking side. Now, looking at Jamahal Hill, I would say he's more of like I don't even know. I think he's like a kickboxer type style. Definitely a striker, obviously, in this regard. And taking a look at his strengths, he has very clean striking, and 57% of his wins are by knockout, which is very solid. Weaknesses is that I feel like he lacks head movement a lot of times, and I think that he has an ability to get caught on the feet quite a bit, especially in that Yuri Prohaska fight. Now, looking at Khalil Rountree, his strengths are obviously that he's a very strong striker as well. 69% of his wins are by KO. We've seen some crazy KOs from Khalil and Jamahal Hill. Khalil did get that knee stomp over Bokauskis that actually ended up fucking tearing his ACL. So Khalil goes out there, he does that soccer kick to the body. Jamahal Hill, you got a whole slew of KOs from him. The Looney Tunes KO he got over Johnny Walker. You got his just masterclass performance against Glover Teixeira. So looking at their weaknesses, though, I think another weakness on the side of Khalil Rountree is just that he's open on the feet as well. Not the greatest defense at times. We saw what happened with him and Pereira. Now, jumping into the momentum check, both guys are coming off of losses. Jamahal has 2 losses in a row, which are pretty devastating losses, actually, if you think about the rankings. He lost in the championship bout against Pereira, and then he goes on to lose to Yuri, so it's like he's kind of getting nudged backwards in the rankings now. Now, he last fought 149 days ago. Something that I'm a bit worried about is just that that's not a lot of time for, his brain to heal and stuff, but looking at his last 4 fights, as I mentioned previously, lost to Yuri, lost to Alex Pereira, and then got that statement win over Glover Teixeira and a statement win over Thiago Santos. Khalil Rountree Jr., on the other hand, last fought 254 days ago. His last 4 fights, it was a win over... His last 4 fights was a loss to Alex Pereira, I think a win over Anthony Smith, a win over Jacoby, and one other person. Guys, sorry, I got messed up on my my screen here. But nonetheless, what I've noticed when I was digging into these guys is that I feel like Jamahal Hill has had a much better strength of schedule. If you go look at some of the guys that Khalil's fought, a lot of the guys are not well known or just not really big players in the light heavyweight division. Now, taking a look at their campus and coaching, I know Jamahal Hill has a mixed bag of training. He trains with a few coaches, I think, at Syndicate, trains with his original coaches from Black Lion Jiu-Jitsu in Michigan, but don't know his key training partners and things of that nature. Khalil, on the other hand, I know he trains with Syndicate MMA, and his coach is John Wood. Don't know who he's using specifically for training partners. Looking at intangibles, and actually, Khalil Rountree, I think, does train a little bit with Luke Rockhold and them, but I don't know if that's considered a full-on training partner or just kind of fun spar. Some intangibles and X factors for this fight. Jamahal Hill and Khalil are both, coming out of Vegas. I know Jamal's originally Michigan, but I think he reps Vegas too because he's currently living there. So I would say there's no pressure from being a home fighter perspective, but there is a pressure here, I think, for Jamahal to get a win because he's on a 2-fight losing streak, and then also the pressure for Khalil to get a win because that puts him kind of up there right next in line then potentially for getting a title shot. So I think that there is a little bit of pressure for both of these guys in that regard. Ultimately, where I've come with my decision is just solely based off the fact that I feel I am picking Khalil Rountree because I feel that after watching Jamal's last fight with Yuri, I worry about Jamahal Hill's chin if Khalil is able to land a flush shot. So in theory, I believe that Jamahal Hill has all of the skills to stay on the outside, piece Khalil up at range, and just deploy that game plan and style that he has normally done when he gets dominant wins. The thing that worries me, though, is Khalil Rountree has fucking bricks for hands. And if he connects flush on Jamal, and if we go back and watch Jamal's last fight with Yuri, he was open for a lot of counter shots, and he ate a lot of counter shots. He actually was knocked down a couple times before he got KO'd. So I feel like knowing all of that, knowing that it was only 149 days ago, I can't negate the fact that Khalil Rountree is going to probably land a shot at some point, and I don't know how well Jamal puts up with that shot. So that is where I'm headed in terms of my choice for this main event. It could be dead wrong. I think that Jamal has the power in his hands to also separate Khalil Rountree from consciousness. So it could go either way, guys. But my pick, I think, after weighing all of the different elements there, I'm going to go with Khalil Rountree just because he's had a little bit more time to recover. And my confidence level here is a 2 because I really don't know what's going to happen. But take it for what you will. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, make sure you give it a like. And also, please subscribe to Fight Feed so you can stay on top of all the MMA content that I will be posting. See you guys in the next video.